So if I have zero ankle dorsiflexion range of motion and every single squat I do looks like a box squat where my hips come really far back, then I create a giant moment arm for the hip. So the hip has to do more work to get out of the hole in the squat, right? Now, if I flip that to a goblet squat with my heels elevated, as I descend into the squat, it allows me to be very upright, allows my knees to come forward. And now when I'm producing force out of the hole, I have a nice moment arm for my knees, for my quads to produce force. And the hips actually can't produce as much force because they're not in a great position to do it, right? So if I have an athlete who's stiff in the ankles and every squat looks like that box squat, I know that they have to use their hips to get out of the hole in the squat. If I grant them a little extra ankle dorsiflexion range of motion, I know that now I can take some of that force and push it over onto the knees and decrease some of the stress on the hips, right? So having extra dorsiflexion gives me some options so I can decrease some of the stress on the hip, right? And here's the other piece. In folks that have, let's say, femoral acetabular impingement syndrome, labral pathology, or hip arthritis is a big one too, these folks tend not to tolerate end range of motion of the hip. And this is in all different directions, but especially hip flexion. So descending into the bottom of the squat is particularly painful in these folks, right? So end ranges hurt. If I can get extra end range from other joints, then I can reduce the range of motion required at the hip and hopefully reduce a little bit of pain, right? So I have an image right here, which is showing a squat with limited ankle dorsiflexion range. And what you'll notice is that in order to get deeper in the squat, I have to utilize more motion at the hip, right? On the far right side, I have an image of myself where I'm trying to utilize all of my ankle dorsiflexion range of motion and I'm elevating the heel, right? And what you'll notice here is I can get the same depth in that squat with much less hip flexion, right? So if I have someone who has a really cranky or irritated hip and I want to try to get them to be able to squat for the long term without bothering it, I can give them more ankle dorsiflexion. I can improve their ankle dorsiflexion over the course of time to get them a little bit out of pain, right?